Why did the laughter stop so suddenly? At first it was just another insult. Another jab tossed across the concrete steps of Building 17. Wilson had grinned as he delivered it, a line polished for maximum effect. "Kitchen, that way, sweetheart." His buddies roared, the sound echoing in the humid Virginia air. She didn't respond. She never did. Winters simply reached for the door handle, her boots steady, her pace unhurried. But when she paused, just a fraction of a second, just enough to show she'd heard, the sound around her shifted. Their laughter fractured, scattered like glass under pressure. Her silence cut deeper than words. And in that fragile pause, smile faltered. No one knew it then, but that silence would echo louder than any gunfire they had ever heard. Inside, the hall smelled of disinfectant and old paint. The corporal at the desk barely looked up when presented her paperwork. "Name," he muttered, eyes locked on his monitor. "Winters, second lieutenant." Something in her tone made him glance up. He wasn't expecting the composure in her gray eyes, the unflinching steadiness. He tried to mask his surprise with procedure, but it lingered in the way his voice caught on her name. "You're late, Lieutenant." "Vehicle trouble," she replied evenly. Serpentine belt snapped. "And you didn't call for assistance." "Didn't need it." She didn't add that she'd replaced it herself, hands working in the dark by memory, as easily as another soldier might lace their boots. Let them underestimate her. It was safer that way. The barracks assignment came, dense schedule folded on top, every line screaming endurance and attrition. 16 weeks designed to break men twice her size. She accepted it without flinching. To everyone else, she was just another officer trying to prove herself in a world that still doubted her kind. But what no one knew, what she could never allow them to know, was that she hadn't come to prove anything. She had come to watch, to listen, to hunt. The briefing room buzzed with low voices when she entered. 41 men and 1 woman, the air heavy with expectation. She chose the back row, posture perfect, back to the wall, eyes scanning every exit. She wasn't ignored, not really. She was studied, dissected, whispered about. Words slid across the room like blades. Diversity hire. Secretary. She won't last a week. She didn't move, didn't bite, she simply watched the door. When it opened at exactly 8:30, silence fell like a hammer. Lieutenant Colonel Carter strode in, every step carrying decades of battlefield weight. He didn't waste words. "Look left, now right. By the end of this program, at least one of them will be gone. Statistically, both." The room stiffened. Eyes darted sideways. Carter continued, voice calm, almost conversational. "We don't teach strength here or speed. Those come on their own. What we look for is instinct, will, the capacity to choose when every option is bad." For a heartbeat his gaze rested on, not approval, not suspicion, something in between. Then he moved on and the air around her exhaled again. The evaluations began. Obstacle course, firing range, tactical drills. She kept her performance measured, deliberate, better than average, never exceptional. Her rifle groupings were clean, competent, forgettable. She let Shine with his tight clusters, let Jason Richards show off his speed, let the quiet veteran demonstrate methodical precision. When it was her turn to disassemble and reassemble the M4, she almost faltered. Not with the weapon, never with the weapon, but with the choice. She could do it faster than anyone in that room. She had done it in darkness, under fire, bleeding from shrapnel wounds no official record listed. But here, at Fort Harrison, speed was danger. Excellence was exposure. And yet when Master Sergeant Young barked begin, her hands betrayed her. Muscle memory took over. Steel whispered against steel, pins and springs falling into order with flawless rhythm. Time slowed. The room grew still. In 42 seconds the weapon was whole again, safety checked, ready for war. A murmur rippled across the candidates. Even Young, stone-faced, unshakable, stared at his stopwatch as if it had lied. 42 seconds, he said flatly. The record had been 1:08. Was the first to break the silence. "That's impossible," she skipped steps. Young inspected the rifle himself. Perfect, functioning, no step missed. His eyes lifted to hers, sharp with a question he didn't voice. "Effective practice," he said finally, dismissing the room back to drills. But the damage was done. She was no longer invisible. Smirk had curdled into suspicion, studied her with quiet recognition, and Collins hadn't even arrived yet. That night in the empty barracks let the mask slip. She retrieved the small pendant from her neck, innocuous, forgettable, and split it open. A hidden drive glowing faintly in the dark. Her fingers moved across the receiver, messages streaming across the screen. Insertion complete. Cover intact. Surveillance initiated. Target assessment ongoing. The reply came seconds later. Proceed with Phase 2. Sends regards. Her lips curved faintly at the name. The man who had found her 15 years ago when she was little more than anger and scar tissue. The man who had shaped her into what she was now, Ghost Talon, a soldier who did not exist. She reassembled the pendant, tucked it beneath her shirt, and stared at the ceiling. Already the walls were closing in. Ego, Young's suspicion, Carter's questions, and tomorrow, hand-to-hand training where nothing could be hidden forever. Sleep came shallow, watchful, the kind of sleep soldiers knew too well, the kind of sleep that ended the second danger whispered its name. Morning broke gray, rain sliding down the barracks windows. Rose before reveille, completing her ritual push-ups, every movement measured, controlled. When the door swung open, she already knew who it was. Collins, hair tied tight, flawless posture, the kind of beauty that felt sculpted for influence. Her smile was polished, her handshake firm, her presence calculated. "Lieutenant Collins," she said, as if the world owed her attention. Nodded Winters, nothing more. But she watched, the designer gear, the expensive watch. The way walked through the base without a single glance at a map, too perfect, too prepared. And later at breakfast, sat alone in the corner, oatmeal and coffee her shield. She wasn't surprised when slid his tray across from hers. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry, just ate in silence like a man who'd seen enough war to know silence often spoke the loudest. Across the hall's voice rose above the others, laughing at his side. She played the room like a violin, every note landing exactly where she intended. Watched, expression calm, but inside her mind the board was already set. Pieces in motion, players revealed. The question wasn't whether Collins belonged here. The question was what game she was playing. When the hand-to-hand session began, patience fractured, pressed her, insult by insult, until Young's voice called them both to the mat. She let him drive her back, let him believe his weight and height gave him control. Then, with a movement so clean it felt rehearsed by fate itself, she flipped him onto the floor. The room froze. His face burned with disbelief. And as adjusted her collar, torn in the scuffle, the edge of ink showed against her skin. Just a fraction of a tattoo, an eagle's talon wrapped around bone. Young's eyes narrowed. Suspicion hardened into certainty, and somewhere in the corner Collins smiled. They would never look at Winters the same way again. Why did Young call her aside when the others had already gone? The training hall was nearly empty, the sound of boots fatting down the corridor, when Master Sergeant Young stopped her with one word. "Winters." His tone was flat, but his eyes told a different story. He led her to a corner, broad shoulders shielding them from the stragglers. "That tattoo, no preamble, no hesitation. I caught a glimpse." Kept her voice level. "Just something personal, Sergeant." "Eagle design." She let her shrug carry the weight of nonchalance. "Had it done after my first technical certification. Tribute to my father. He was Army." Young studied her for a long beat, the way predators study each other before deciding whether to fight. It looked military. Inspired by it. He didn't believe her, not entirely, but he also didn't press. "Get that uniform replaced before tomorrow. Appearance matters here." "Yes, Sergeant." She turned to leave, but his voice cut through once more, softer, sharper. That throw you used on Wilson, not standard army. Pulse flickered. She forced herself to meet his gaze. I've had eclectic instructors. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or memory. Then he nodded once and walked away, leaving her with the quiet knowledge that suspicion had taken root. By dinner, the whispers had spread. Men glanced at her from corners of the room, eyes sharp with curiosity. Sat surrounded by his pack, but the usual bravado was gone, replaced with a taut silence. Though, slid into the seat across from with a smile that could cut glass. Mind if I join you? Thought us girls should stick together. Gestured with her fork, leaned in, lowering her voice to something conspiratorial. You made quite an impression today. Ego is shredded. He'll recover. Oh, I know, men like that always do, but he's dangerous when he feels challenged. It sounded like a warning, but recognized the undertone. It wasn't concern, it was assessment. Wasn't offering safety, she was probing for weaknesses. I always watch my back, Sid. Smile sharpened. I'm sure you do. I caught a glimpse of your tattoo, by the way, military symbolism. Didn't blink, personal significance, nothing special. I have one too, touched her hip briefly. Compass rose, always reminds me where I'm going. Maybe we can compare ink sometime. Before could reply, a commotion at the entrance pulled the room to silence. Lieutenant Colonel Carter entered, followed by a man who made the air itself shift. Civilian clothes, iron posture, General Thomas Wilson's father, Deputy Director of Special Operations Command. Conversations died instantly. Attention on deck, Young barked and every trainee stood. As you were, Carter said, but no one relaxed. Not really. All eyes tracked the general as he passed through, rising to meet him, pride written across every line of his face. The resemblance between father and son was undeniable, the same square jaw, the same confident bearing, but the general's gaze carried weight had not yet earned. When those eyes swept the room, they paused on, just a heartbeat. But in that heartbeat something passed, a flicker of recognition, sharp and quiet as though he'd seen her before, somewhere she should not have been. He moved on, saying nothing, but leaned closer, voice soft as silk. That's father. Rumor is he's personally overseeing the new weapon system being tested here. The Black Talon could change the balance of power in 3 regions. His expression didn't change. Inside, her stomach tightened. That name wasn't supposed to be common knowledge. I wouldn't know about that, she replied calmly. Smile was thin, knowing. Aren't we all just here for training? That night when the barracks finally fell quiet, unhooked her pendant once more. Her fingers typed in the dark, the screen casting faint light across her face. Urgent update. General Wilson on site. Potential breach. New variable, Collins, M background too perfect. Request verification. The reply came swift. Intel received. Collins background under review. Maintain distance from Wilson. Accelerate surveillance. Phase 3 authorized. Phase 3, more equipment, wider reach, more risk. By the time slipped back in, laughing softly from whatever gathering she'd charmed her way into, had already hidden the device. Caught her eye in the mirror, brushing her hair, and said lightly, still convinced you got lucky today. He'll push harder tomorrow. You don't care, do you? What any of them think? Shook her head, not here to make friends. Smart, reflection smiled back, though allies can be useful. Are you offering to be mine? Maybe we already are. The words hung heavy in the small room, an alliance neither spoken nor trusted. Dawn brought rain, relentless, gray, unyielding, perfect weather for the wilderness navigation exercise. 40 trainees huddled under canvas as Master Sergeant Young's voice carried through the storm. Today, you'll prove you can navigate when Mother Nature herself is the enemy. They would be dropped into 20 square miles of forest with nothing but map and compass. 12 hours to reach extraction. Failures, late, off course, or missing checkpoints. Already knew who her team would be. glaring like a wolf nursing a wound, calm as ever, and smiling as though the storm was a stage built just for her. Grabbed the squad packet with theatrical authority, unfolding it as if he already led them all. Standard wilderness kit, first aid, rations, 1 canteen, water tablets. He passed the map around, voice carrying command he hadn't earned. "We'll run it in 8 hours. "Not in this weather," said quietly. "Flash floods are common here." Jaw set ready to dismiss her, but cut in. "She's right, seen it happen. Creek beds turn into rivers in hours." The ride into the forest was silent but tense, the kind of silence that isn't emptiness but pressure. Glared across the canvas benches, adjusted her rain gear with perfect precision, studied the map, unbothered, and sat in stillness, listening to the rhythm of rain, committing every contour of terrain to memory. When the truck doors opened, they stepped into ankle-deep mud. Rain beat against their shoulders, visibility down to 100 yards. "Bearing 57, 3 miles, announced. "Point, Collins with the pack, Winter's rear guard." Deliberate, dismissive, but accepted it, falling into formation. The forest swallowed them quickly, branches heavy with water, ground treacherous beneath every step. An hour in, the first checkpoint marker gleamed orange against a tree, photographed it, smirking. 1 down, ahead of schedule. Voice was even. "Next section gets steeper, ridge ahead." Spoke before could. "Eastern approach is shale, in this rain unstable, safer." His jaw tightened. He wanted to dismiss her, needed to, but nodded. "She's right. Eastern turns into a landslide in weather like this." Spat out a grudging fine. They climbed granite outcroppings, slick but solid. Moved first, strong and athletic. He glanced down expecting her to falter. Instead, she scaled the rock with fluid ease, movements precise, balanced, natural. "Where'd you learn to climb like that, Winters?" His voice was sharp, testing. "Support officers don't spend weekends on cliffs." "Rock climbing club, college." He didn't believe her, but there was no time to push. At the ridge line, rain lashed their faces. The descent brought them to a swollen creek where another orange marker clung to a fallen tree. Consulted the map, satisfaction curling his lips. "Next section follows this creek. 1 mile. Easy." Stomach twisted. The water was already rising. "That's a flood zone." Sneered, "The map shows." The roar cut him off. Not thunder, water snapped, flash flood. They scrambled uphill as a wall of water tore through the creek bed, trees and earth tumbling in its wake. Stared, pale. If hadn't spoken, if hadn't listened. No one said it aloud, but the silence carried its own weight. They adjusted course, higher ground along the ridge. Movement slowed, ankle twisted on a hidden root. She cried out, collapsing into the mud. Was at her side instantly, hand steady. Sprain, not broken. She wrapped it tight, efficient, precise. But as she worked, she saw it, a scar above the ankle, small, crescent-shaped, too deliberate to be chance. Her hands didn't falter. Her voice stayed even. But inside, her pulse thundered louder than the rain. "Black crescent." Caught her watching, smiled through the pain. "Nice field medicine, Winters, advanced for a support officer." Finished the rap silent. Leaned closer, voice low. "You remind me of someone I knew once. She wasn't what she seemed either." The implication sat between them, sharp and heavy. By midday, they reached the river crossing, 40 feet wide, swollen with flood. Impassable, unless. "There," said, pointing to a fallen pine bridging the narrowest section. Tested it first, securing rope across. Crossed, athletic but careful. Followed, supported, ankle shaky. Halfway, the bark gave way. She slipped, dangling above the torrent. Moved before thought, faster than instinct, faster than her cover allowed. Inhuman speed. One hand caught's wrist, hauling her back onto the log. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Suspicion sharpened into certainty. No ordinary lieutenant could have moved like that. When they reached the far side, stared at her, words failing. Its expression held quiet knowledge, and smile was colder than the rain. Something had changed. The storm was no longer outside them. It was here walking beside them, watching, waiting. Why did the forest suddenly go quiet? It wasn't just the rain, though that had finally eased into a steady drizzle. It wasn't just fatigue, though every step pulled at muscles worn down by hours of soaked mud and uphill climbs. It was something else. A stillness that pressed in, heavy and unnatural, as though the woods themselves were holding their breath. Felt it first, the shift of wind, the absence of birdsong, the weight of eyes where no eyes should be. "Contact," she murmured. The word slipped out before she could cage it, too fast, too sharp. Combat language, not the tongue of a logistics officer. Stiffened immediately, scanning the tree line. His instincts confirmed hers. Where? 2:00, 12. She kept her voice even casual as though she were pointing out landmarks, but the look she gave told the truth. 2 positions, high ground, clear fields of fire. Frowned, instructors maybe. But his hand had already twitched toward a weapon that wasn't there. Reflex, training, fear. "Hunter," suggested, though her tone was wrong, too smooth, too rehearsed. No, his voice was low, certain. "Not hunters." Said nothing more. She simply adjusted her stance, casual but ready, eyes on the slope below. Tree line, less exposed there. Hesitated, caught between pride and sense. Then another flicker of movement confirmed it, and he nodded. Controlled pace, no sudden moves. They moved together, slipping into the cover of pines 50 yards down. The world seemed to exhale again, but the feeling of being watched lingered, heavier than before. Once they were shielded by branches, turned to her, suspicion dripping from every word. "You spotted them before anyone else. How?" Shrugged, happened to be looking. "You said contact before you even pointed. That's combat language." Before she could respond, cut in. "Does it matter? We're off the ridge. Focus on extraction." But's eyes stayed on her, narrowing. The river, the throw on the mat, now this. The file said support officer, but everything she did said otherwise. They pushed on. The forest thickened, light fatting under a sky already sliding toward evening. Mud sucked at their boots. Leaned heavier on the makeshift staff, though noticed the limp looked too precise, too consistent, as if calibrated for effect. The third checkpoint came and went, photographed in silence. By the time they reached the fourth, near a derelict hunting cabin, the storm had shifted again. Clouds tore open just enough for the dying light to spill across broken shingles and rotted wood. "Checkpoint," muttered, snapping the picture. His jaw was tight, movements sharp with irritation. "We should push," said. 3 hours until extraction window closes." Scanned the cabin, too exposed, too convenient, a choke point in the terrain, not through there. Snapped his head around. "You think everything's a trap, Winters." She didn't answer. Instead, her eyes traced the roofline, the angles of cover. Years of training, of instinct, refusing to stay buried. She felt the hairs rise on the back of her neck. And then there, just a glint, just a shift, a reflection too clean to be natural. "We're being funneled," she said quietly. Didn't question. He adjusted his grip on the rope still tied to his pack, swore under his breath, only smiled faintly as though she'd expected it all along. They detoured wide, circling through the trees, every sense stretched taut. Twice more caught glimpses, shadows repositioning, always at distance, always with discipline. Whoever they weren't amateurs. When night fell, it wasn't gentle. It crashed down, swallowing the forest in sudden blackness. The rain returned in sheets, and the temperature dropped hard enough that every breath smoked the air. "Shelter," said. "We won't make extraction in this state." Resisted, pride gnawing at him. But even he knew hypothermia killed faster than missed checkpoints. They found partial cover under an overhang of rock, stacking branches to blunt the wind. It wasn't enough. Nothing ever was. Huddled in the dim glow of a single light, silence stretched between them. Rain hammered the world, the forest pressed close, and still that weight of eyes lingered. Broke first, you're not who your file says you are. Kept her gaze steady, and who do you think I am? Not logistics. His voice was sharp, accusing. Not a desk, not a late transfer. You move like someone who's been out there, someone who's killed out there. Smile widened as though enjoying the show. I've been wondering the same thing, she said softly. The throw, the river, the way you, she tapped her temple lightly, see things before anyone else. It doesn't add up. His eyes flickered between them. He didn't join the accusation, but he didn't deny it either. His voice came quiet, measured. Sometimes the truth doesn't fit the paperwork. Spoken like someone with secrets, said. Her words were silk, but her eyes were knives. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Rain filled it, heavy and endless. Didn't sleep, couldn't. She sat watchful at the edge of their meager shelter, eyes on the tree line, ears tuned to the storm. She thought of warning, ghost Talon operatives don't exist, which means if you're compromised, no one will come. She thought of the tattoo, the slip of collar, the suspicion tightening like a noose. She thought of scar, crescent-shaped, burning in her memory. And beneath it all, she thought of what still lay ahead. The weapons test, the leak inside Fort Harrison, the truth buried beneath all this theater of training. When dawn finally came, gray and cold, they were still being watched. She knew it. She felt it. And the worst part wasn't the danger of being hunted. The worst part was knowing that sooner or later she would have to decide whether to remain unseen or to step into the light as the ghost she truly was. And once she did, nothing would ever be the same. Why did silence greet them at extraction instead of relief? The helicopter's rotors beat the air into a storm of rain and grit, but no voices shouted congratulations, no instructors waited with clipboards. Just a faceless crew chief waving them aboard, eyes hidden behind tinted goggles. No names exchanged, no words spoken. Collapsed into his seat, jaw clenched, fury radiating off him. Slid gracefully into her harness despite the limp she'd worn all day, expression calm, almost amused. Sat heavy, quiet as though measuring every breath. And kept her face still, though inside her pulse hammered with the memory of shadows tracking them through the trees. When the bird lifted, no one spoke. The storm drowned everything else. Back at Fort Harrison, the silence broke. Carter waited in the hangar, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Behind him, Master Sergeant Young's jaw was set in something harder than disapproval. The rest of the trainees watched from a distance, whispers threading like smoke. Word had spread fast about the flood, about the river, about the way Winters had moved. Squad 4, Carter said as they disembarked. Report. Stepped forward first, voice strained. We completed the course, all checkpoints documented, extraction on time. Carter's gaze swept the squad, landing on each in turn. Injuries. Lieutenant Collins sustained an ankle sprain, reported. Manageable, added smoothly, as though reading from a script. Carter nodded once, then his eyes shifted to, held there, measured. Winters, anything to add? Her throat felt dry, but her voice emerged even. Adverse weather conditions complicated navigation. Squad adapted accordingly. Adapted, Carter repeated. His tone carried no judgment, yet it hung in the air like a verdict. He dismissed them with a flick of his hand. Debrief in 1 hour. As they dispersed, Young's voice cut low, meant only for, get that collar fixed. Next time it tears, I won't accept personal significance as an answer. She nodded, face neutral, but inside she knew the circle was tightening. In the dining hall that evening, tension wrapped around every table. Sat with his core group, voice sharp, anger simmering under each word. Sat apart, eating in silence, his eyes flicking now and then toward. Made her entrance last, flawless as ever, sliding into the seat across from with a tray of untouched food. You saved me today, she said lightly, as though commenting on the weather. On that log, most people would hesitated. You didn't. Didn't think about it. That's the point, isn't it? You reacted faster than thought. Smile didn't reach her eyes. That kind of instinct doesn't come from the support side. Spoon paused halfway to her lips. She set it down carefully. You seem very interested in where I come from. Curiosity said, tilting her head. We're the only two women here. Naturally, I want to know who's at my side. Or across from it, asked softly. Smile sharpened. For a moment, neither looked away. Two predators circling, cloaked in polite words. Later in the barracks, when finally drifted to the showers, moved with practiced precision. She retrieved the pendant, fingers cold as they plugged it into the tiny receiver. The glow of the text was the only light in the room. Update shadows observed in wilderness sector. Not cadre, military precision, possible hostile surveillance. The reply came seconds later. Confirmed. External actors suspected near perimeter. Wilson Communications under watch. Collins background, anomalies discovered. Proceed with caution. Her hands stilled on the device. She had known. She had felt it in the ways questions cut too clean, in the scar etched like a brand. Now confirmation locked it in place. She typed quickly. Collins likely asset. High probability linked to Black Crescent. Maintaining cover. Continuing surveillance. Reply, proceed with Phase 3B contact. 3 days advanced. Same protocol. She cleared the device, slipped it back under her collar, and lay in the dark as the showers hummed across the barracks. Laughter floated faintly through the water and tile. To anyone else, it would sound harmless. It sounded like a blade being sharpened. When sleep finally came, it was thin, restless, broken by the memory of eyes on the ridge and the weight of smile. The next day dawned cold and clear, but clarity brought no ease. Carter's debrief stripped away excuses with surgical precision. You deviated from assigned routes, he said flatly. Explain. Spoke first. Flash flood blocked the path. We adapted to terrain. Carter's eyes cut to, your suggestion. Yes, sir. Alternative route along higher ground. His silence stretched. Then, and the river crossing. Winters saved me, said smoothly, inserting herself before could answer. Without her, I'd have gone under. The words sounded generous, but her glance toward was calculated. A gift disguised as gratitude. A debt placed like a weight. Carter's gaze lingered. Interesting, he murmured, then he dismissed them. But Young stopped her again outside the room. His voice was low, but the edge was sharp enough to cut. Winters, you keep showing skills you shouldn't have. One more unexplained surprise, and I'll dig until I find the file that doesn't exist. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment she thought he'd seen through her entirely. But then he walked away, leaving her with the truth she already knew. Her time was running out. That night she slipped past the perimeter once more. Same path, same timing, same shadows pressing against her lungs. She reached the clearing and found waiting, seated on the same fallen log, rain slick on his weathered face. His eyes scanned her the way only a mentor could, reading what she didn't say. You're moving too fast, he said quietly. They're already watching, she replied. Young Carter and Collins, she's not who she says she is. She never was. Handed her a device, its glow revealing intercepted fragments of coded communication. The crescent symbol shimmered in the projection, paired with coordinates that traced back to Fort Harrison itself. Leak confirmed, said, but not the source. Could be Collins, could be Wilson, could be someone higher, until you know you don't engage. Nodded, though her gut screamed for action. 8 more weeks, Winters. That's how long you have to stay invisible. Can you? She didn't answer right away. The image of glare, smile, Young's warning, Carter's stare, all of it pressed heavy against her chest. Finally she said, I can, but the walls are closing in. Then you push them back. His voice softened. For a moment, mentor replaced handler. You don't carry this alone, remember that. She almost believed him, almost. By the time she returned to her bunk, was already asleep, or pretending to be. Lay staring at the ceiling, the phantom weight of the tattoo on her back burning like a brand. She had entered Fort Harrison to find a leak. Now, the real danger was whether she could keep herself from becoming one. And as sleep finally took her, she wondered, when the truth came out, who would survive the echo of her silence. Why did Carter choose her name first? The training roster was pinned to the board before dawn, the ink still fresh. Close quarters drills, paired evaluations, it read. Scanned the list with calm eyes, but inside her stomach knotted when she saw it. Winter's first rotation. No buffer, no chance to observe others first. Straight into the fire. Her opponent, Wilson. The room hummed with expectation as the squad gathered around the padded mats. Carter stood at the edge, arms crossed, Young at his side with a stopwatch. Rolled his shoulders, smirking in a way that carried both challenge and hunger. "You ready to get embarrassed again?" he asked. Said nothing. She stepped into position, bare feet gripping the mat, every breath controlled. "Begin," Young barked. Lunged fast, heavier and stronger, trying to overpower her from the start. She absorbed the impact, redirected but not too cleanly. She had to bleed authenticity into her defense, just skilled enough to hold her ground, never enough to show the truth. But wasn't here to win. He was here to tear the mask from her. Every move pressed her harder, faster, angling to force her into something too polished, too revealing. And then it happened. His elbow came in too close, too sharp, meant not just for the drill but to hurt. Instinct flared, unstoppable. She moved without thought, catching his arm, twisting, pinning him to the mat in 3 clean motions that had no place in army manuals. His face smashed into the padding, breath driven out of him. The room went dead silent. Carter's eyes narrowed. Young's stopwatch froze in his hand. Released immediately, stepping back, posture calm, face unreadable. Surged to his feet, rage in every line of him. What the hell was that? "Adaptation," she said evenly. "Bill." "Enough," Carter cut in, voice like steel. His gaze flicked to Young. "Time." 46 seconds, Young said flatly. "Noted." Carter's eyes lingered on, too long, too sharp. Then he dismissed the group. Stormed off, muttering threats under his breath. The others followed, buzzing with whispers, but lingered at the edge of the mat, her smile curved like a blade. "That was beautiful," she said softly. Turned away, but's voice followed. "I've seen moves like that before. Not here, not in training, somewhere else." Didn't answer. Silence was safer. But silence wasn't armor, not anymore. Later that evening, she found herself cornered at the range. Carter stood at the booth beside hers, firing precise groups with an ease that spoke of years in combat. When his magazine clicked empty, he set the weapon down and looked at her. "Your record says logistics. Your hands say otherwise." She kept her eyes forward. "I've practiced more than most." "Don't insult me, Winters." His tone wasn't angry. It was quiet, surgical. "I've seen professionals hide. I've seen ghosts wear uniforms like masks. You're good, I'll give you that, but you can't bury skill forever. It bleeds out." Her pulse quickened, but her voice stayed calm. "Are you accusing me of something, sir?" He studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. "Not yet, but I am watching, and if you compromise this program, I'll tear you apart before anyone else gets the chance." He walked away, leaving her with the echo of a truth she could never admit. By the time she reached the barracks, was waiting, alone. "You know," said, lounging on her bunk with a book she clearly wasn't reading, "I looked you up." His heart jolted, though her face gave nothing away. "And your record checks out. Too clean, actually, like someone scrubbed it until it shined. Funny thing about spotless files, they usually mean there's something worth hiding." Sat on her own bunk, untying her boots slowly, deliberately. "You seem very invested in me." "Of course I am." Smile widened. You're interesting, and I don't say that often." The air between them was charged, sharp with unsaid truths. Leaned closer, lowering her voice. "That tattoo, I've seen it before, overseas, years back. I never forget a mark like that." Froze inside, though she forced her hands to keep moving. "You must be mistaken." Maybe, eyes glimmered. Or maybe not. Secrets have a way of surfacing when you least expect them. She lay back, book in hand, as if the conversation had ended, but knew better, had planted her seed. It would grow, strangling everything in its path. That night slipped from the barracks again. Its warning echoed in her mind. Stay invisible. 8 weeks. No mistakes. But invisibility was bleeding away faster than she could hold it. At the clearing was waiting, posture heavy with concern. "They're circling you." "They already know too much," she admitted. "Carter's probing, Young's suspicious. It's dangerous." "Then tighten your mask," said. "This mission isn't about your cover, it's about the leak. Wilson's testing new weapons systems here. If Crescent gets them, regions burn." "I know." Her voice was quieter than she intended. "But what happens when I can't hide anymore?" Looked at her, something like sorrow in his eyes. "Then you do what you've always done. You fight, even if no one remembers your name." His words hit harder than gunfire, because she knew he was right. Ghosts didn't get recognition. They didn't get medals. They didn't get remembered. When she returned to the barracks, was awake, sitting cross-legged on her bunk, eyes glinting in the dark. "Late walk?" asked lightly. Froze in the doorway but forced calm into her voice. "Cleared my head." "Good idea," said, lying back down. "You never know what shadows follow you here." The words lingered long after the lights went out. And lay awake, knowing with absolute certainty that wasn't just watching her. She was hunting her. Why did Carter change the drill at the last second? The morning briefing was supposed to be about urban operations, standard building clearance with sim rounds and chalk grenades. Everyone expected routine, fast, loud, exhausting. But when Carter stepped to the front, his voice carried an edge sharper than usual. "Today we test judgment," he said. "Split squads. One will play defenders, one attackers. Neutral civilians will be placed inside the structure. Fail to distinguish the two and you fail the drill." The room shifted, unease rippling through the trainees. Sim rounds were one thing. Civilians in the mix meant chaos, hesitation, accidents. "Winters," Carter said, scanning the roster. "You'll lead blue team. Wilson, you'll lead red." Smirked, already savoring the setup. She wasn't supposed to lead. She wasn't supposed to command. Carter had made it so anyway. Inside the mock city block, the air reeked of oil and paint. Rain slicked across plywood walls. The helmets muffled everything but felt the pulse of every behind her. Steady as always. 2 others, jittery but competent, and sliding into place with that same infuriating smile. "Your call, Lieutenant," said softly. Scan the layout, the corners, the high windows where shadows might lurk. She read the field like a language no one else could see. 2 fire teams," she ordered quietly. "You take west, I'll take east, clear slow, identify targets, no assumptions." They moved. Sim rounds cracked through the air, paint splattering against walls. His team pressed hard, loud and aggressive, the way he always played, but's focus wasn't on them. It was on the civilians, role players scattered through the rooms, shouting, panicked, unpredictable. Twice her team froze, weapons up, fingers tense on triggers. Twice she cut the air with her hand, pulling them back, refusing to let panic override judgment. Then it happened. A figure burst from the doorway, rifle up, face half-shadowed. Her teammate swung his muzzle toward the movement. "Wait," barked. She lunged, knocking his barrel down. The sim round fired harmlessly into the floor. The civilian dropped the rifle immediately, hands raised, terror painted across his face. Actor or not, the fear was real. Her teammate's hands shook. He had a weapon. He dropped it, snapped. "You'd have killed him." Silence followed. Then's voice smooth and cutting. "Good catch, Winters, most wouldn't have moved that fast." Her eyes gleamed behind the visor. Everyone else saw gratitude, saw suspicion sharpened into certainty. The drill ended with Blue Team scoring higher, but exploded anyway, tearing off his helmet in front of Carter. She cheated. Nobody reacts like that without combat time. Carter's face gave nothing away. "Are you saying she broke protocol?" "I'm saying she's lying about who she is," shot back. "Look at her moves, her calls. She's not logistics, she's—" "Enough," Carter's voice cracked like a whip. "This isn't the place." But his eyes lingered on again, colder now, testing, weighing. That night whispers roared through the barracks. Accusations spread, fed by envy and wounded pride. Some dismissed him as bitter, others listened too closely. Fed the fire with surgical precision. A comment here, a glance there. She played both sides, never committing, always stoking. By the time lights went out, knew she was standing in quicksand. Sleep was impossible. She walked the perimeter instead, rain dripping from her hood. The base was quiet, but her mind screamed with warning. 8 weeks. No mistakes. She almost didn't see until he stepped out of shadow. He moved with soldier silence, but his eyes carried no accusation. "You've done this before," he said simply. Froze. "Done what?" "War." His voice was low, steady. "Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter when, you've carried it. I can see it." Her throat tightened. "And what if I have?" "Then you don't owe me answers." He looked away, rain sliding down his cheek. "But be careful. Men like Wilson want you to break. Carter wants you to reveal. Collins," he hesitated. "Collins wants something else. Can't read her yet." Studied him, suspicion battling with a flicker of gratitude. Had no reason to protect her, but maybe he wasn't protecting her. Maybe he was protecting something in himself, something he recognized in her. The next day, Carter's trap snapped shut. Obstacle course, but not standard. He ordered to run last after every other candidate had dragged themselves bloody across the ropes and mud. By then, the field was a swamp, slick with rain and footprints. "Your turn, Winters," Carter said. His tone carried no malice. That made it worse. She started slow, measured, every move calculated to appear human. Mud sucked at her boots, rope burned her palms. She forced hesitation into her climb, missteps into her run. But when she slipped, genuinely this time, mud ripping her feet from under her, instinct betrayed her. She caught herself on a single hand, body twisting midair, landing light as breath. Too fast, too fluid. The silence of witnesses was louder than any cheer. His voice broke it. "You see that? That's not training, that's not even possible." Young's jaw was locked, eyes sharp. Carter said nothing, but his stare drilled through her like a spotlight. Clapped slowly, mocking applause. "Bravo, Winters, you keep surprising us." Forced her breathing calm, but inside, the prison of silence cracked. Every act of restraint, every mask, every lie, they were strangling her faster than exposure ever could. That night in the barracks pressed the blade deeper. "You saved another civilian today. You moved like a shadow on that course. You think nobody notices. They notice. I notice." She leaned in, her voice silk and steel. "You're not who you say you are, and one day soon you'll slip. When you do, I'll be there to catch you." Stared at her in the dark, heartbeat steady despite the storm inside. She whispered only one thing, soft enough for alone to hear. "Or maybe I'll be there to catch you." For the first time, smile faltered. Why did Carter call her name in front of everyone? The day's schedule promised endurance runs, another brutal test of lungs and will. But halfway through the briefing, Carter's voice cut the room like a knife. "Winters, Wilson, Matt, room now." Dozens of eyes turned at once. His lips curled in satisfaction, kept her face calm, but inside she felt the knot tighten. This wasn't routine. This was theater. Carter was pulling the curtain. The mat room smelled of rubber and sweat. Young stood at the edge, clipboard in hand. Carter watched from the far corner, arms folded. "Evaluation," Young said. "Close quarters. Rules are simple. Win." Cracked his knuckles, finally. They circled. Opened with brute force, a shoulder charge meant to flatten her. Absorbed it, shifted, let him stumble past. She stayed measured, restrained, until his next strike came low, dirty, a knee aimed where rules blurred. Her body reacted faster than thought. She twisted, locked his leg, and dropped him flat. The move was precise, surgical, unmistakably professional. Slammed the mat, furious. "That you see it. She's not some logistics officer, she's—" Again, Young snapped. They reset. His rage burned hotter. He lunged wild, fists swinging. Blocked, redirected, held the line. But rage makes men dangerous. One fist grazed her jaw, and for a second the mask cracked. Pain flared, sharp and real. Her counter was instinct. A strike too fast, too clean, snapping back against the mat, gasping for breath. Silence. Carter's gaze was unreadable. Young scribbled something without lifting his head. Coughed, glaring up at her with hate sharp enough to wound. "Who the hell are you?" Didn't answer. She couldn't. Silence was the only shield left. But silence was also the rope tightening around her throat. That night the barracks pulsed with whispers. Had shouted enough in the halls to poison half the squad. Winters isn't who she says she is. She's lying. She's a plant. Some dismissed him, others fed on his fury. Of course, moved like smoke between the groups. She never said much, just enough. A glance here, a murmured comment there. Her influence spread while she kept her hands clean. By lights out, the room felt hostile. Lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting every breath to stay calm. Sometime past midnight, a whisper cut the dark. "You're running out of cover." Awake, watching. Didn't move, didn't answer. Leaned closer, her voice a knife edge. "I know the crescent mark, I know what it means. And I know you're not here for training, you're here for something else. So am I." His chest tightened. "Then we're not allies." "No," said softly. "We're mirrors, different sides of the same coin." Her hand brushed her ankle, that scar, crescent-shaped, deliberate. She smiled in the dark. "One day soon you'll have to choose whether you're my enemy or my twin." Sleep never came after that. The next day Carter's test sharpened further. He called alone into his office. The walls were bare, save for the weight of his stare. "You're skilled," he said without preamble. "Too skilled. That can be an asset or a threat." Kept her voice steady. "I've worked hard, sir." He shook his head. "No one works their way into instincts like yours, so I'll ask once, who trained you?" Her pulse thundered. She forced her face calm. "Various instructors, civilian and military." "Don't lie to me, Winters." His tone never rose, but it struck harder than a shout. "I've buried men who couldn't do half of what you do, and I've buried men who could, men with no names, men who came from programs no one admits exist." Her throat felt dry, her silence heavy. Carter leaned back, eyes never leaving hers. "I don't care who you are. I care whether you're here to compromise this program. If you are, I'll end you myself. Understand?" She nodded once. It was all she could give. Dismissed, she walked out into air that felt too thin, too sharp. Every breath cut. By evening the storm broke. Literally. Rain hammered the base, wind tearing branches from trees. The squads huddled inside, restless, angry. His voice carried loudest, his fury boiling over. "She's a fraud, you all saw it. Carter saw it, she's not one of us. She's a damn spy." Sat at her table, silent, hands folded, oatmeal untouched. She didn't look up. Didn't need to. The room was already split. "Shut your mouth, Wilson," said quietly. His tone carried no heat, but the weight of it hushed the air. Stood, face flushed. "You defending her, you've seen it too. She doesn't belong here." Met his glare calmly. "Maybe she doesn't, but neither do you if all you care about is tearing down your own." The words cut deeper than fists. Hands clenched, but Carter's sudden entrance froze him. "Sit down," Carter ordered. All of you, storm's bad enough outside, don't bring it in here. The storm raged through the night but barely heard it. Its earlier words echoed instead, mirrors, different sides of the same coin. By dawn, exhaustion weighed heavy, but her instincts screamed louder than fatigue. Something had shifted. Trust was gone. The game had sharpened. And she knew, with cold certainty, that sooner or later, silence would no longer protect her. It would destroy her. Why did the SEAL commander freeze when he saw her back? The storm had barely broken when the call came. Every candidate was ordered into the hangar, gear in hand, faces drawn and pale. The air buzzed with unease. Something had shifted. Carter stood before them, young at his side, but it wasn't their presence that silenced the room. It was the man beside them, Commander Hale, Navy SEAL, scars visible even in dress uniform. His eyes scanned the trainees with battlefield weight, pausing on none for more than a heartbeat. Until her. Felt the stare like a blade. She kept her posture perfect, hands steady, heart thunder hidden beneath her uniform. Carter's voice carried over the hangar. This is no longer training. Fort Harrison has been compromised. Last night, our surveillance perimeter recorded unidentified movement. We believe hostile reconnaissance infiltrated the grounds. This is now a live security operation. Gasps rippled through the room. Eyes flicked instantly to suspicion written like fire. Lips curved, but her eyes stayed cold, unreadable. Commander Hale spoke then, his voice gravel and steel. You were chosen for evaluation because we believed you could adapt. Now we'll see if that belief was misplaced. You'll deploy in teams, sweep sectors, report anomalies, no heroics, no mistakes. Assignments followed, fate or something placed again with end. They deployed into the woods as dawn bled through clouds. The ground was slick, the trees heavy with storm's aftermath. Hours passed with no sign until spotted it, a glint in the mud, spent brass NATO caliber, fresh. Crouched swearing under his breath, they were here. Studied the ground with practiced calm. More than here, they watched us, waited. Felt it too, the weight of eyes, the silence of hunters. Contact left, murmured. Figures emerged from the tree line, not instructors, not role players. Men in black fatigues, rifles raised, movements disciplined. Black crescent. The firefight was sudden, brutal. Sim rounds were gone, these were live. Bullets tore bark, shredded mud. Fired wild, shouting, rage louder than tactics. Stayed calm, returning measured bursts. Crouched low, precise, every shot too perfect for coincidence. Moved like instinct, like ghost. Cover to cover, clean bursts, angles read before they unfolded. Every motion screamed what she had tried to bury. This was not her first war. One crescent fighter fell close, his mask torn. Saw it then tattooed beneath his ear. The crescent mark, sharp and deliberate. And she knew, wasn't just aware of them, she was one of them. The fight ended as fast as it began, crescent retreating into trees, leaving silence and smoke behind. Rounded on her instantly, face twisted. You moved like them, you are one of them. Ripped her helmet off, fury breaking through silence. If I were one of them, you'd be dead already. The words rang sharper than gunfire, even blinked at the force of them. But it was too late. Carter and Young were already there, Commander Hale with them. They had arrived in time to see more than wanted revealed. Winters, Carter said slowly, eyes locked on her. Who trained you? Her chest heaved. For the first time, silence wasn't strength. It was cowardice. She pulled her collar down, fingers tugging at the torn fabric. The tattoo glared against her back, an eagle's talon wrapped in a crescent of bone. The hangar went silent, the forest went silent, even the rain seemed to stop. Commander Hale stepped forward, eyes narrowing as though ghosts of his own past clawed into view. He froze, recognition written in every line of his face. I've seen that mark, he said, voice low. Kandahar, places where men didn't walk away, that's not ink, that's an oath. face twisted in confusion. What does it mean? Hale ignored him, his gaze never left. Your ghost talon. The words fell heavy, final. Gasps spread through the squad. Smile shattered just for a heartbeat. Carter's jaw clenched, Young's eyes narrowed and stood pale with disbelief. Lifted her chin. I was. Hale pressed. Her voice was calm, almost soft. Ghosts don't exist. Not officially. Not anymore. I came here to find a leak. To stop what's bleeding out before it kills more than any of us can imagine. All eyes turned too, and for the first time her smile broke into laughter. Well played, she said, dropping the limp, rising smooth as glass. But you're late, Winters. The Crescent already has what it came for. Her hand moved fast. A signal. Shadows broke from the trees again, Crescent fighters swarming. The firefight that followed was chaos. Screamed orders no one heard. Fought calm, steady, holding the line. Hale moved with soldier's grace, commanding without words. And let the ghost free. No more hesitation, no more mask, every motion precise, every shot final. Her silence spoke louder than shouts, louder than betrayal. When it ended, Crescent lay broken among the trees. Was gone, vanished into the chaos, scar and smile the only trace left. Silence returned, heavy and ragged. Carter stared at, breath sharp. You compromised your cover. I saved your men, she said quietly. Hale stepped forward, eyes still locked on the tattoo. His voice carried something like respect, something like sorrow. Ghosts don't ask for recognition, they just carry the weight. Met his gaze, and when they're done carrying. Hale didn't answer, he didn't have to. The silence spoke for him. Back at Fort Harrison, the debrief was short, sharp, incomplete. Crescent infiltration confirmed. Security breach sealed. Collins listed missing, presumed hostile. And Winter's ghost talon remained, not celebrated, not condemned, simply left in the shadows as always. That night she sat alone, the tattoo burning on her back like truth etched in fire. Passed by, pausing at the door. You saved us, he said simply. Shook her head. No, I just acted. He studied her a long moment, then nodded. Sometimes that's the same thing. When he left, she let the silence settle again. Because silence was what she had left. Not medals, not recognition, not even trust. Just the quiet knowledge that she had stood where others would not. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.